Finding yourself the prey in the talons of an owl on a dark night is a gruesome affair. The owl will rip you to pieces or eat you whole. Then it will digest you later to spit up a compacted pellet of what was your fur and bones. Then the owl kicks back, rolls itself a cigarette, and smokes it while listening to the wolves howl. This is the smoking owl. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and I'm half Cherokee, from Georgia in the United States. At the time this story took place, my fiance and I were living on a large farm in Maryland. We didn't use the farm, but we were renting a small house on the property, and we were free to come and go around the grounds. I was only 19 at that time we lived and took this place. The only residents in our home were myself, my fiance, and our cat and dog. Our cat was a lunatic barn cat that I had rescued because I can't say no to animals that need help, and our dog was my loyal pit bull, who is a sweet, cuddly, scaredy cat. She weighed about 75 pounds and is afraid of her own shadow. Our farm was situated on about 20 acres of land, and our driveway was about a half a mile long. So usually when I would get home from work, my loyal dog and I would go for a walk, and usually I brought my fiance with me. Not that I was afraid to go alone, just that he spends too much time playing games and should also use his legs. Beyond our driveway is a 12-mile-long road through the woods and farms until it finally reconnected with civilization, so it's safe to say that we were far, far from other people, except for our landlord, of course. The first mile was through the farmland, followed by a brief patch of forest, and then about a half a mile of wheat fields, and then a solid, deep, and very dark at night forest for 2 more miles. Now that you have a bit of the layout, on to the really creepy bit. So it started off like any other weekday evening. My fiance and I returned home from work to our happy cottage and happy pets. Harley, our dog, was frantic to go for a walk, so I quieted her and changed into walking clothes and asked my fiance if he would join. He had gotten home shortly after me and said he had seen one of those coyotes that we have around close to the field by our house. But as you may know, coyotes are mostly scavengers, especially out here on the East Coast, so I wasn't too worried, and I'm very capable of defending myself. I called him a puss and then told Harley that we could go and that we would be fine without him. Laughing to myself, we left the cottage and started walking toward the driveway. The sun was going down and the October air had started to get a chill to it, and the wind rustled through the cornfields next to our long driveway. The corn was about 6 feet tall at this point of the year and impossible to see through, so I assumed my fiance was just trying to scare me because there was no way he could have seen a coyote in this field. Harley was enjoying her time in the field, tearing in and out of the corn stalks on our walk up the driveway. And I knew that as big a coward as she was, that she would alert me to any danger very quickly by running away. By the time I reached the end of the driveway, the sun had set and the moon, which had already come out, was shining high above the fields. It wasn't quite full, but it provided enough light that I didn't need to use my flashlight or Harley's collar light. We turned left down the road and proceeded across the first section of the field. The first field was soybeans, and if you don't know, they are relatively short plants that nothing but a rabbit could hide in. Off in the distance, I spotted a few deer, but nothing alarming, so we relaxed and enjoyed our walk through the night air. I threw a stick and Harley brought it back over and over again. Typical dog and dog owner stuff. We reached the first small section of trees and Harley stopped and bumped into my leg, letting me know that there was something ahead. It wasn't a coyote or a deer, but there was a rabbit that had been hit by a passing car and was still alive and struggling. As much as I hate to say this, there was no way it was going to live, and honestly, it's probably what drew that coyote pack in. I knelt down by it and using my knife quickly put it out of its misery, as my family had taught me, and let it pass into the next life. Feeling sad but somewhat relieved that all we had encountered was a handful of deer and that poor rabbit, we continued our walk and passed to the next field. This was a wheat field, and the wheat was about ready for harvest, so it was quite tall and hard to see through. The field was quiet though, and Harley didn't do anything, so I figured that the coyotes had passed on if there had been any at all. Now this is the part you've been waiting for, and I don't know what it was, but here it is. We rounded the corner of the field and into an area with wheat on our left and forest on our right, and the air seemed to go still. Harley got closer to me, and I heard rustling in the wheat field. I saw 3 tails circling back toward the forest. Coyotes. The eastern coyotes are small, but in a pack they get pretty ballsy. Harley raised her heckles, and I yelled, "Get out of here, go on, fuck off," as loud as I could, and the coyotes, startled, scattered off into the trees. I decided to turn around and get out of there before they decided to regroup, because I am brave, but I'm not going to walk into a darkened forest with a coyote pack and 1 cowardly pit bull. We turned to head back, and again I heard a rustling in the wheat. A confused coyote? I thought it must be, but no. Harley was standing stock still, staring at the wheat. And I whistled for her to come with me, that high-pitched, ear-piercing 2-fingered whistle. That snapped her out of it for a second, when my whistle was returned from inside the wheat. All of a sudden, all of the family legends I had heard came flooding back to me, and I expected to see a tall, thin creature emerge, but nothing did. I didn't smell rotting meat or feel a sense of dread. Instead, I was transfixed with fear and curiosity. I whistled again. The whistle was returned again. Very human sounding, but at the same time not. Against my better judgment, I said, "Hello?" My own voice replied, "Hello?" My hand on my knife, I said, "Show yourself." Silence. No bugs. No coyotes. No Harley noises. Just my own breath. Slowly the rustling started again, and I turned on my flashlight. I shined it on the wheat field, and what I saw confuses me to this day. Animal eyes. That green-yellow reflection of light that cast back at me, but what it was connected to didn't make sense. There was a girl, no more than 14 or 16, crouched in the wheat. She wore what I think must have been some kind of deerskin or fur, and she was naked otherwise. She was very thin and looked as though her skin had never seen sunlight. Her hair was long and tangled with wheat and leaves. Under any other circumstances, I would have said she was beautiful, but at that moment, she was terrifying. We stared at each other for what must have been a solid minute or so, but felt like much longer, until I heard the unmistakable coyote howl from the forest. Both of our heads snapped toward the noise, and immediately I heard her take off through the wheat toward the sound. At that same moment, Harley took off toward our house, and I went after her. We didn't stop running until we got to the driveway, and I stopped, not wanting my fiancé to know I was running away from something. I could still hear the howling in the distance, and we started walking at a brisk pace. We made it back to the cottage with no further problems, and I didn't tell my fiancé about it not wanting him to go out with the gun. She hadn't hurt me, so I didn't think it right to hunt her. I was awoken in the middle of the night that night by the sound of coyotes outside our cottage. This wasn't unusual, but now I wondered if she was with them at this time. When I was coming home from work about a month later, I had stopped obsessing about that night, and I almost thought I had imagined it when I had to slam on my brakes for something in the road. It was dark and my headlights hid its eyes, reflecting green and yellow. It was a large coyote. It just stared at my car for a moment and then ran off into the woods. I know this sounds crazy, but I still wonder if that was her.